Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And you know, it's amazing how the mainstream media are starting to catch up on some of the things I've been saying for many months now. Obviously, they're watching the Loving Life channel, I would suggest. And amongst those things I've been saying is that there is a L factor missing. You know, the old logic factor in the ANC government. And how I've been talking about how black economic empowerment is destroying the economy, when the rest of the media just talk about it like it's all business as usual. Well, an article has appeared in Biz News which kind of follows exactly what I've been saying. And it's very succinct. It's by Anthea Jeffrey, and it's worth repeating because it kind of sums up the situation. Black economic empowerment public procurement policies have long harmed the millions of unemployed and disadvantaged South Africans, heavily dependent on the state for vital goods and services. But instead of ending costly tenderpreneurship, the National Treasury is intent on ratcheting up its black economic empowerment requirements under the Draft Public Procurement Bill of 2020. Let's call it the bill. Gazetted last month for public comment by the 31st of May 2020. Now, let's remember that the only people who actually benefit from black economic empowerment in reality are the ANC politicians, their cadres, their families, the well-connected. Because when it comes to shares and stuff like that, no company is going to give their 51% of their shares to John Ndlovu in Soweto. But they might give their shares to a well-connected politician who could get a lot of business for their business because guess who's going to benefit? Yep, foresaid politician. That's what black economic empowerment is actually all about. It's about enriching the black privileged. Now, let's continue with the story. The government is well aware of how badly preferential procurement has gone wrong. In 2010, for instance, Pravin Gordhan, then finance minister, lamented that the state was paying more for everything than a private business would. 40 million rand for a school that should have cost 15 million rand. 26 rand for a loaf of bread that should have cost 7 rand. That's because you got these little shelf companies that are run by the well-connected, and all they do is act like a BEE pipeline from the supplier through the BEE pipeline to the recipient, which is a government agency. And on its way through the BEE supplier, that's when the prices get ratcheted up. And guess who scores big? The well-connected ANC cadre who runs that shelf company. This is called a scam. It's called legalized corruption. It's how the ANC are benefiting from these racist economic policies and employment policies. Anyway, in 2016, Kenneth Brown, then Chief Procurement Officer at the Treasury, warned that between 30% and 40% of the state's total annual procurement budget had become tainted by fraud and inflated prices because of black economic empowerment and shelf companies, the hidden face behind the actual beneficiary. In 2018, Mr. Brown's acting successor, Willie Matubela, told the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture that the government's procurement system was deliberately not followed in at least 50% of all tenders. Moreover, once the usual tendering rules had been suspended on some spurious basis, a claimed emergency, for instance, a contract which started at 4 million rand was soon sitting at over 200 million rand. Nice one if you can get it. The old ANC, wow, they are so corrupt. That's why I call South Africa a gangster state. These abuses had a huge impact on service delivery, added Mr. Matabula, for the government was the biggest procurer of goods and services, spending an estimated 800 billion rand a year. That figure has since risen to nearly R1 trillion a year. As far back as 2012, Gwede Mantashe, the ANC Secretary General, urged black economic empowerment companies to stop using the state as their cash cow by providing poor quality goods at inflated prices. He also urged a halt to the procurement policies under which the government commonly paid 27 rand for a 7 rand bottle of water in its attempts to create a middle-class person who must have a business. Now, this is where they're talking crap, because it's not a middle-class person. They're talking about a well-connected ANC cadre. As I say, the John and Glovers of the world, the guys who live in Soweto or Alexandra or Khayelitsha or any one of these little townships, they've got no chance, zero chance of scoring big time in these contracts. Zero. It's about who you know. That's how corrupt the whole system in South Africa is. Far from being halted, however, these policies are being greatly extended under the Treasury's new bill on black economic empowerment, because they're just going to create more enrichment for the black privileged, the tiny minority of black privileged. The rest of the black community live in abject poverty, far worse than it was pre-1994, and I mean far worse. The bill creates enormous uncertainty about the new rules and how they may shift from time to time. The Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act of 2000, which the bill replaces, at least laid out the key principles. In essence, it gave black economic empowerment firms 10 or 20 empowerment points, depending on contract value, while stating that the remaining 90 or 80 points had to be allocated on price and efficiency. By contrast, the new bill allows the finance minister to prescribe a framework for preferential treatment, which must include a preference point system and applicable thresholds, in order to advance black people along with women, youth, and people with disabilities. No one knows how large these preferences might be, but 50 points for price and 50 points for BEE, or Black Economic Empowerment, are clearly feasible. Now, let me clarify, when they talk about women, youth, and people with disabilities, guess what? Still based on skin color. You have to be black. This is the racist ANC government in action. Under the Minister's framework, contracts will also be set aside for local service providers, domestic manufacturers, township and rural enterprises, and various SMEs. Bidders outside of these categories will be barred from consideration, irrespective of how efficient and cost-effective they might be. It's absolutely crazy. I put up a video earlier tonight about how South African Airways, with the retrenchment process, are going to be retrenching white people first. You heard me right. Doesn't matter what the skills are. Pilots, you know the guys who fly the planes? Very, very experienced white pilots will now lose their job, and some black pilot who's only been flying for about 2 months will now get his job. Will you fly South African Airways? I certainly wouldn't. Not in a million years. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Under the bill, the minister has major discretionary powers to change the preferential framework at any time by regulation, though he must first publish a draft and invite written comments. We know what happens with written comments. They just go in the bin. It's just part of the process which they just totally ignore. This allows the minister to decide on substantive rules which bypass Parliament and undermines the separation of powers. It also contradicts the Constitution, which says a framework for preferential procurement must be set out in national legislation. The new bill will also make it even more difficult for businesses to predict how preferential procurement rules may change from time to time. Yet already firms find the uncertainty around black economic empowerment a major barrier to investing and doing business in South Africa. And this is an ANC that's claiming that they are trying to encourage people from overseas to invest in this country. You'd have to have rocks in your head to do it. You know, the ANC government speak with a forked tongue. As the local subsidiaries of American companies pointed out in 2017, no one plays a game where the goalposts keep shifting all the time, like they do in South Africa. Surprise, surprise. In addition, the new bill will prohibit firms from contracting with the state at all unless they comply with the Employment Equality Act, the most racist employment act in the world today. And the liberal mainstream media think it's all okay. That's what you call fake news. Okay, let me repeat that. In addition, the new bill will prohibit firms from contracting with the state at all unless they comply with the Employment Equity Act of 1998. The Employment Equity Act is soon to be amended to give the Minister of Labour and Employment the power to set binding racial targets for companies in different sectors. These targets are sure to be based on demographics representatively and to ignore the limited skills and experience of the black population, almost half of which are under the age of 25. Under the new bill, the minister will also be empowered to make regulations setting market-related price ceilings for goods or services. This power is not explained, but the wording suggests that the minister will be able to impose price controls in many contracts with state entities, including state-owned enterprises. The minister's power might thus be used to set the developmental price for Eskom coal that the government has failed to achieve under its proposed amendments to mining legislation. These amendments were put before the Parliament in 2013, but never successfully enacted. Well, when have the ANC ever done anything successfully, unless it's enriching themselves? Good question, and I think it should be a point for a debate. Again, this would allow the executive to bypass the legislature and further undermine the separation of powers. In addition, the bill seeks to reduce spiraling procurement litigation by adding more layers to a mandatory dispute resolution process. A dissatisfied bidder must first ask the relevant state institution to reconsider its decision. Thereafter, he must apply to a new public procurement regulator to examine that decision. Only once this has been done may he seek relief from a new public procurement tribunal. And only after the tribunal has made its ruling may he approach the courts for judicial review under the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, PAGA, of 2000. Now, if that sounds complicated to you, guess what? You're not alone. And let me give you another little secret. The ANC members of Parliament and their black entourage could never make up this crap. The people who are actually making these policies are those who once worked for George Soros and the Open Society Foundation. Yeah, they're people who are getting their orders directly from the Soros group of NGOs, etc. You know, this is a slow takedown and dismantling of South Africa. Not so much by the ANC, because their handlers are George Soros and the Open Society Foundation. And you can just do your own research on this on Google, and you'll see what I'm talking about. All or most of Cyril Ramaphosa's advisors used to work at the Open Society Foundation. No one told you that, did they? You go and do the research. You'll see what I'm saying is true. Dissatisfied bidders will need deep pockets to traverse all these steps in the dispute resolution process before they can finally seek relief from the courts. In practice, many are likely to give up along the way. This is what it's all about. This is sick. Who will benefit from the bill? A host of township, rural, and other small enterprises are clearly to be given access to the close to 1 trillion rand public procurement pot as well. A broader range of people may be drawn in, but political connectivity will doubtless still largely determine to whom state contracts are awarded. Get that? Political connectivity. You got to be in on the game. You got to be up with the ANC. You've got to have kind of backhanders happening. This is the whole basis of government in South Africa and why it's going so horribly wrong. A narrow group of black economic empowerment tenderpreneurs will draw lucrative rents from additional preferences. Price inflation will escalate, leaving less revenue available to fund delivery. The poor, talking about the black poor, as ever, will suffer the most, while the constitutional requirement for transparent, competitive, and cost-effective procurement will recede still further into the darkness. So too will any realistic prospect of increased investment, growth, employment, and prosperity. All I can say, guys, is let's look forward to the coronavirus doing its job, because once those townships are in chaos, the ANC government will fall into complete disarray. They will completely leave the country leaderless. I can see people like Hippo Eyes, Ramaphosa, heading north up to Dubai, where he's put all his cash, and his mates doing the same. And they'll leave South Africa in a complete mess. And it's at that time that the adults in the room will come out, forge a new state, and then rebuild without this nonsense that's been going on for the last 25 years. It's a tragedy what happened in 1992 to 1994. And the international media, the fake news, are a complete and utter disgrace. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, please stay safe. Bye.